Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are at. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a great team, a great set of panelists to go over a number of different topics today. But essentially what we're going to do and what we're going to cover and get some great insights is how you can grow your app with ASO, App Store Optimization, and ASA, Apple Search Ads. So before we jump into it, what I'm going to do is introduce each one of our panelists. My name is Anthony Asuncion. I'm the team lead for App Growth Consultants at AppTweak. So I help my clients, improving their performance, paid, organic, conversion, A/B testing. We also have Nick from Reddit.
Hey, I'm Nick. I work over at Reddit, and I have I have over a decade of experience in user acquisition, but I've been very fortunate to be able to work on ASO over the last few years at Reddit. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, huge fan of Reddit. I don't want to say how much time I've spent on it because it'll be a little embarrassing, but definitely great to have you here. Next, we have Wesley. So I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Wes. I've been in the paid space for quite some time. My latest stint running ASOs at Twitch, and now I've been primarily focused on just running ASO.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Wes. And then last but not least, we have Andrea, Senior ASO and SEO Account Manager at Yellowhead.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. Good to have you today. So I'm managing clients on ASO and search engine optimization activities. I come also with user acquisition background, programmatic, media buying, CVR, funnel, and all those nice keywords.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, Andrea. I've already learned a couple of new things in just preparing for this call. So I know our guests will find your insights very valuable. So let's jump into it. I know last year and this year, a lot has changed, not just for apps and games, but pretty much a lot has changed within the mobile space on both iOS and Google Play. So I thought it would be good to understand, what are each of your main priorities this year for ASO in 2024? Wes, I know you're working on a bunch of new things, but what are your priorities for this year?
Yeah, this year I think really still honing in on international growth and finding other areas to really expand for these apps. I think in the past where we focus a lot on optimization, especially on the conversion side, this year is a little bit different, and growth is in sort of that first-time download. So finding ways to improve first-time download conversions and even just brand awareness in that sector.
Yeah, awesome. I know you said international growth. Have you been doing anything specific for markets? Because I know users in each market can sometimes resonate with different metadata creatives. Has that been part of your strategy?
Absolutely. I think everything, right? From just translation to transculturalization to creatives, even descriptions, everything's just so different. And so understanding the different nuances is a massive learning. And we use a lot of A/B testing to even understanding the different audience, the different value propositions, what they find valuable. And that's been something that has been successful for just expanding into international markets for myself.
Yeah, I love that buzzword, value propositions. Nick, I can only imagine that you probably deal with users in different markets, and probably the main value prop differs from market to market, or I could be wrong. What have your goals been? Has international growth been part of it? And have you noticed kind of different segments of audiences in different markets resonating with different features, value propositions?
Yeah, definitely. Like Reddit actually is a pretty unique reflection of the world. And so, if you have an interest, whatever, you have an interest, you have a common, or you just are like located in the same place, like you can find a community on Reddit, and each country sort of has a different culture. And so we need to make sure that our app storefronts reflect the right cultures in each country. And so, yeah, internationalization has been a really big part of the App Store. And when I took over ASO, I think one of the main priorities was just making sure that all the App storefronts properly reflect the product. And so localization is a huge part of that. And similarly to Wesley, like first time install rate is something I've been really focused on, and just really trying to make sure I understand like what are the problems of these first time users? Why are these users not retaining? And then just trying to address those problems in the storefronts, because we have to remember that the App Store fund is App Store is really the last place that the user sees before they make that crucial decision to install your app or not. And so, yeah, you just want to make sure that you're properly speaking to these users and addressing any issues that they could run into. I also believe that, like, if you are solving the problems for a first-time installer, you're also sort of figuring out the problems of lapsed users, because a lot of the lapsed users will also have very similar problems of new users who aren't retaining. So you sort of are able to address, like, kill two birds with one stone, if you want to use that phrase. And yeah, so that's been interesting. And I would also say that we also know, because the Reddit app is a bit old now, it's an older app, there's a lot of existing users coming to our App Store front as well. So there's, we need to speak to both new users and existing users and lapsed users.
Yeah, I think you bring up a lot of good points. One thing I was, interested in and wanted to follow up on, at a high level, how do you conduct that research to understand what resonates with users, in different markets, whether it's understanding what features they resonate with or what problems they're identifying? Do you have like a process in place on how you understand that?
Yeah, so fortunately we have awesome consumer research teams at Reddit. And so they've dived into all these problems through surveys, through like focus groups, and just through like the data that we can see internally. And yeah, just kind of, and with that, we've been able to build out different profiles of new users and existing users. And with that, we're able to identify like what are the things that's not working for them and what is working for them. And yeah, I pretty much take all that and try to figure out, yeah, how do we speak to that in our app stores?
That's awesome. And Dre, I know you're on the kind of agency side of things and work with a lot of different clients. So are you noticing the same goals for your clients? If you are, what are the steps that you're recommending? What are the steps your clients are taking to really get that incremental growth across the international markets?
Yes. So we see that since the beginning, ASO is changing, is growing. It started something very raw, very basic, some keywords, some metadata, some screenshots. But eventually we're trying to bring the knowledge from other fields like user acquisition to improve and to take ASO to the next level and bring also marketing approach. So whether it's following what Nick said, understanding our users, something that we do in ASO, we analyze user reviews. This is part of the ongoing ASO optimization, not just improving the rating, but our users are telling us what they think about our app. So using, massive data tools, we can bring down main topics, what our users are talking about, and based on that, address also the value proposition, the visuals, the metadata to see what they like and what they don't like. So ASO is definitely going beyond just optimizing keywords and doing some research and addressing what our users are looking for and giving the answers, testing and improving the messaging all the time to improve CVR, obviously.
Yeah, I think you bring up a lot of good points. I like the point you brought up about ASO isn't just keyword optimization anymore. I think one thing people have to realize is that just ranking #1 for a keyword only means that your app shows up first. You still have to convince the user to download your app. And that can come from a number of different things you all mentioned: A/B testing, conversion rate optimization. So I know we've listed a couple of techniques that we use to convert our users, in different markets. Have any of you seen any successes this year from those, strategies you've been implementing?
Yeah, definitely. I think now more than ever, speaking in that tone and that language to the native speakers is really important, right? I think when you think about not just translation, but what are users typing, what are they searching for, it's so different. And that's really the key, right? Finding those really nuggets of keywords that you may not think about that is just really powerful. And where I also think ASO has changed a lot is, maybe Nick, you can validate this as well, is that we're almost product managers, right? We're looking through not only the optimization side, but through reviews and ratings, we're understanding what does the consumer want? What is breaking? What is not working? What do they want more of? And I also find myself more in the product side where I'm not just doing the ASO, but taking that knowledge and giving to the product team to build either new features that clients and users want. So it is very interesting how it's evolved a lot since 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, those are some good points. I know, Nick, we when we spoke previously, you had some, good wins, about potentially increasing, conversion rate and seeing some good things on your side. Do you have any specific examples that you could share with the audience?
I mean, we've been really leveraging a lot of the A/B testing tools, testing the different screenshots with different value prop messaging. I'm actually really excited for something that we are about to do. And this is something I actually worked pretty closely on with Andrea, which was, and this is good for if you don't have a consumer research team. So like if you really need to understand, or if you're sort of struggling with what is the right messaging, one thing that might work for you is first work, like it's a very cross-functional role, right? So maybe start reaching out to your product marketing teams, your marketing teams that understand the value prop and consumer messaging that we want to go out there with. And then what we did was then we looked at, once we were able to distill down to like four main value props, we then sort of sifted through all the App Store reviews and tried to understand like, how are users explaining these value props in their own words? And this is sort of just like an old marketing trick of just like use your customers' words to describe your own product. And this is something that I think should do very well. I mean, if you're using the words of your own consumers, it should resonate very well with them. And so I think this is a tactic that you can use if you don't have a consumer research team and you really want to still, speak that same lingo as your consumers to help convey the message properly. And sometimes the jargon gets, with all the professional jargon and that can happen, you really want to make sure that you're using words that resonate well with your users in each country, especially when you're thinking about localization.
I also want to add, like not all apps are huge like Reddit or Twitch or other apps. Even if you're a small app and you don't have BI tools or robust systems that, can analyze everything, you can always export your user reviews and put into an AI tool and say, okay, summarize what are the 5 best values that my users are talking about, what they like most and what they don't like. And it will summarize a chunk of information and you can take it from there. You don't need like a whole BI team. So sometimes things are available also for smaller apps, even if you don't have like a whole team supporting you.
Yeah, and I want to add to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll just say, like, you make a very valid point, Andre, where I think nowadays, right, with all the layoffs, like resources are very difficult and even scarce more than before. Where I think ASO really stands out a lot is that you can run A/B tests relatively cheaply in a way, but also more effectively, right? And to your point, the value proposition and localization, there's tools that we can use now that we didn't have a couple of years ago, where you can quickly validate your hypothesis really fast. And that's a really fun part that I think the ASO drives into the market now than it did ever before.
Yeah, I love the point you brought up too about leveraging your reviews. Another example of that, one of our clients, SoundCloud, we looked at their reviews, saw that users love SoundCloud because they get unlimited free skips on the free version. Their competitors don't. We took that value prop, applied it to CPP, targeted their competitors with it, and saw a great increase in conversion rate. And I love the points you all brought up. I think a general consensus was, especially if you're lean on resources, it's really important that your teams work together. I love that your product team, your ASO team, your review team, whatever that is. And I think that also applies to paid and organic. In my experience, I see that a lot of my clients, paid and organic teams are in a silo. And I agree with everything you guys said about how international growth, incremental growth is a key success for 2024. And I really think having your paid and organic teams, your ASO and ASA teams working together can really help achieve those goals. And Jerry, what are your thoughts on this? Do you see in your clients your paid and organic teams working together? If not, why do you think they should?
It's interesting because many times, we are very worried and concerned that we are cannibalizing this ASO with ASA, but many times we are cannibalizing our internal efforts. We have our marketing team, we have offline doing things, then we have paid, and everyone is trying to come up with the next thing, and we're all working on the same. And sometimes, every time I have a client, I follow them on Instagram, I follow them on other social places. So you don't need to come. It's like sometimes I get updates like I have some card game apps, and I get the new rarities before, because I see them on the social app before my point of contact is given. So we should work more together in the marketing efforts, not to waste resources, but also to have a unified messaging, which is super important. Users see us in different channels, and what is following the previous question, if there's certain values that we want to promote, even if we talk about them in different ways, we should be talking about the same values. So that on one end. In terms of cooperation between different departments, this is crucial. Even if each department, like ASO, ASA, have different KPIs, which is our best friend KPIs, we need to be aligned to maximize those efforts. So we in ASO, maybe 5 years ago, we only wanted just installs, but now we can get information from our Apple Search Ads friends and say, okay, these are the keywords that are converting more. If you're good on attribution, said, okay, this keyword may not be converting so good, but this is the one that has the highest lifetime value. I'm getting the biggest output from these terms. In certain apps, you can see that, for example, if you have like a video editor or a photo editor, maybe of the video editors are bringing more money than photo editors. So I will bid on all the terms, and I will promote all the organic generic terms, but maybe we'll do more A/B testing on the terms that are bringing more money, or to see how it can improve. So communicating paid teams with organic teams is crucial to understand. We can contribute from each other. We do sometimes a little bit better keyword research than paid teams, that no one get offended. Maybe it's just the inherent part of ASO, and sometimes Apple Search Ads, they're just bidding on keywords. So we can give them more, hidden gems, or to see if they are really converting. And they also can provide us information about share of voice or certain terms, or other options that could be there that we don't see. In ASO, the fact that a term has a high search score, a lot of people are looking for it, and I'm ranking number 3, doesn't mean I'm converting on that term, and I don't get any information. So if you're doing Apple Search Ads, you can get that information from your team, or on the search terms in the Google Play Console, you can see what are your converting terms, and also take that into consideration when you're doing your optimization. So that communication, and also delivering that message also to our creative teams to see what we want to emphasize. When we target a certain keyword or a certain value, we need to make sure that our screenshots are talking our message. If I want to convert users that like more information, and other users that have like more memes or funny content, I need to make sure that my screenshot is delivering that message to improve the CBR and test it. So basically, the communication, which is not trivial, okay, brings better results for sure.
Yeah, definitely. One point I really like that you brought up was that, both ASO and ASA teams can support each other in different ways to really help achieve, what their KPIs are. Maybe I'm biased, but I do agree that ASO we usually do a little bit of better keyword research. But, Wes, what are your thoughts on this? Have you had any experience of ASA team supporting ASO team supporting ASA?
Yeah, I would say from my experience, and I think a little bit more still now, is that both teams are already siloed, especially when ASA, from my experience, has been sort of bucketed into the paid side. But I do think in past experience at Twitch, where working with ASA, you do have a bigger force when you work together, right? There's a lot more synergies. I think paid, the learnings are very different, right? They optimize on the creative side. So you get a little more insight into what is converting. And then on the ASO side, from the metadata to the keywords, even A/B testing, you learn a lot about the audience. And the difference in what you learn combined can be very powerful. So an example with Twitch was that we were A/B testing different components of the UI in the app. And one thing that we found was that chat or when people, like when you see chat, that resonate the most within the younger audience. And taking sort of that knowledge, we gave that information to both the paid side as well as even the CRM side. And what we noticed across the board was that even open emails with chat featured was stronger than no chat. So I think every team brings a very different perspective. And when you combine forces, share information, you're creating a very holistic sort of strategy moving forward for not just the ASO team, right? But really everyone else involved, from the offline that you mentioned to the paid side. So it is, I think, a really powerful thing to conquer together and not just be taking those learnings and just improving, your own channel. Like Andre said, we're all kind of going to that same sort of KPI, right? Which is getting better installs. And so why not join forces and be a part of that journey?
Yeah, I love the overall sentiment from both your answers, essentially, that there's a lot to gain from every team working together. When you find on ASO can help ASA, but it could also help the external marketing channels. Wins from external marketing can help ASO. All those insights can really help grow not just the specific growth team, but also the app in general, which we're all working for at the end of the day. And sometimes I feel like that can get a little lost. So I love the messaging about when all the teams work together, you can become more efficient, you can find wins and get that overall growth. Nick, in your experience, have you seen this, not seen this? Any examples of, what's worked for you in the past?
Yeah, so I actually think that like right now is probably the best time for paid and ASO to be working together. So historically, at like my time at Twitter and EA, it was also very siloed, where like paid and ASO were seen very separately. And, I really think that was just because there wasn't really much you could really do with ASO to really help paid and vice versa. Like there's no way to do customized messaging with custom product pages like you can do today. And so there's just a lot more tools with ASO that I think a lot of paid teams can really benefit from, like from the data, but also just like being able to really customize that landing page, I think is like the biggest one to me, so that you can just have that cohesive experience for the user going from paid to organic.
Yeah, definitely. I love the point, you bring up there, and it's, interesting because not only do I have a segment of clients whose ASO and ASA teams are siloed, sometimes I think ASA can be a little undervalued. I love the keyword research ideas you brought up. For example, I'll work with clients and they'll get a keyword list from Apple, and a good amount of those keywords are just not relevant, which is going to increase their spend. And so I think that's an example where ASO can help, and ASA can be a little more can work a little better when the teams work together. Andrea, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think ASA is undervalued? And if you do, why do you think some of your clients feel this way?
I think it's definitely undervalued, and obviously the approach is different for every app and life cycle and the volume they have. But if there's one main difference that I see between App Store optimization and search engine optimization, is that when you look for something in a search engine on the web, the results that you get that are not sponsored are pure organic based on the content and your query. And in the store, we know that it's not that exactly. You get one of the main ranking factors is the total number of installs you get for a certain keyword. Okay, so it has been very trendy lately to talk about cannibalization between ASO and ASA, but eventually, if you combine forces, you're gonna get more installs. Yes, you need to find out the exact how to leverage each one, but on each keyword, you're gonna get more overall installs, which means better ranking if you combine those two. Obviously, you need to optimize your bidding, your CPI and everything to see how it works. But the main thing is that if you want to expand to other areas, which is not your natural traffic, there's no way you can access those keywords if you don't do paid, if you don't do Apple Search Ads. Because if you have a new feature, if you have a new partnership, I have this gaming app client that is in the wrestling field, and they partner with a different type of wrestling app. the keywords are different, and they wanted to do they wanted to rank for keywords that are not bringing traffic. So if you don't do paid, you're not going to be shown for those keywords. So you need to do paid. If you have a new feature, if you're being, I keep repeating the video editor and photo editor. If you just was a photo editor app and now you want to do video, you're not going to rank for video because you're not bringing traffic for that. So if you do paid, you're going to be showing up there, and you're going to eventually create like chicken and egg situation where you start bringing from paid organic, and eventually you're going to be able to decide, okay, I'm bidding less, I'm doing less ads on these keywords, I'm increasing, I'm naturally ranking, and allocate your paid efforts to whatever the results are coming. So I think for every app at different stages, there should be this healthy combination of both. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think too the App Store is just becoming increasingly competitive, and so to really get that competitive advantage, you really have to synergize between your teams and really take a nuanced approach. You know, I have a client, Max, and for March Madness, it was them and Paramount Plus that only you can stream March Madness games without a TV subscription. But Max introduced a very synergized ASO and ASA campaigns. And the day of March Madness, they outranked Paramount Plus for pretty much every generic March Madness term. And I really think that's, Andrea, to a lot of the points you pointed out was, you know, not just the teams working together, but being in sync. When are we going to update our metadata? When do we begin targeting our keywords? When does our custom product page goes live? When does our seasonal strategy start? The seasonality battle is one early. So completely aligned with what you said. You know, what do you think? You know, Nick, do you think ASA is, you know, undervalued? Is it just maybe not be you know, used in the right way for, you know, a lot of App Store games?
I think ASA. I think any channel where you can use it to diversify the top of funnel is important. And ASA is one of those channels wherever you can like really tailor your message to a very specific cohort of users, people who don't have your app. That's just a very hard thing to do. And so, and that's very unique to paid channels, I think. And so, yeah, I think ASA, using it to tailor your message to new users or existing users, whatever your target audience is just a very powerful thing. And of course, like getting that top placement in search results is very powerful, especially when it's super competitive. Like to your point, if you really want to rank for March Madness or whatever specific event is happening, yeah, paid and specifically ASA is a great tool for that.
Yeah. And Wes, I know we've spoken previously, you know, how keyword research can help, you know, ASA. And I know you've dealt with some challenges of getting ASO and ASA working together. What's your experience, you know, working with both of these teams?
Yeah, I think ASA is actually very important if used well, right? I think where the biggest trouble is how do you set the right campaigns or the right keywords you're targeting. And I think a lot of things that are discussed is that 60% or if not more of installs really come from search, right? And if you think about how the App Store has evolved over time, it's content and search. And so really pairing it together, like you said, timing wise, when do you launch CPPs or even in-app events and metadata updates, that all coincides with like really creating that sort of funnel of what's next and how long do you need to prepare for it. I think in the past we used a lot of IAEs in app events to really rank for keywords a couple years ago. What I found was the longer duration actually helped really the expansion and the discoverability of that app. So it all depends on what works for the app and what you've been testing and finding that sweet spot of when to launch prior to something going live and really building up that hype, right? I think in anything now, it's like you don't want to miss out on something that's exciting. And how do you plan for all that is pretty crucial.
Yeah, all great points. I think one thing I've heard on, you know, my end, essentially ASO and ASA, they can have very different goals, right? You know, ASA, you get that immediate ROI. ASA, the results take a little longer. And so I think that's one thing that can keep paid and organic teams working together. So you're watching this video, you're trying to get your paid and organic teams, your ASO and ASA teams working together. What are some reasons we can give our viewers so they can take that back to their team and justify why there should be more synergy? Wes, I know when we were prepping for this call, you gave a lot of great examples. I think you had, I know you mentioned examples for Twitch. Do you maybe want to, you know, go into more detail about that, you know, for our viewers today?
Yeah, it depends on every company's different goals and KPIs, right? I think, as Andres said, depending on where you are in terms of like the business life cycle and what you're trying to expand on, is it awareness? Is it building the brand awareness, right? Where you're a small app and you're trying to compete with the larger corporations and apps that have been around for a long time? Or are you just really defending your brand because now you have other players who are just trying to capture those installs? Something that we did where in the past at Twitch, we had the rights to broadcast the Olympics in 2020. And, you know, I think anyone in their right mind would be like, well, why is Twitch, you know, involved in Olympics, and who's going to watch Olympics on Twitch? I think where we kind of found the right footing and timing was that in-app events just launched, and we really utilized that to hone in on the content. So ultimately, without really much paid effort, we were able to rank in the top 10 for the keyword Olympics, which I don't think in any previous ASO history would even be possible. So timing wise is very important, but I think what we could have done a little bit better was also fortify that with ASA, right? Getting the first 1 or 2 spots and really outbidding other competitors, I think would drive a lot more viewership to Twitch and understand that that's one place to watch content for Olympics. But I think what Andreas mentioned, it's really about that synergy that really matters when you're trying to rank for something important for your company or your app. And that really comes down to the KPIs and what the company wants.
Yeah, definitely. I know one question I get a lot from my clients is scalability. How do we scale our ASA campaigns? And I think one thing that ASO can help with, we already kind of briefed upon that with keyword research, finding those other keywords we can bid on to build our campaigns. Andrea, you know, what are, you know, your thoughts on this, and what reasons could you give our viewers to have their ASO and ASA teams work together?
Eventually, that small incremental growth is going to come from keywords that originally Apple Search Ads teams are not targeting because they don't see the highest ROI. But you want to increase installs and you want to expand to other places. So you need to target other terms. When we do keyword research, we really try to address all the options. We use all the tools to check, you know, how to shuffle combinations and long tails and look for where people are interested in to try to see where's the other, not just the main keywords that people are looking all the time, and get those other little audiences that we can address and test it. I think there's something that is very difficult in ASO, which is attribution and getting confidence levels on your testing. And because of that, a lot of ASO managers are either reluctant or don't want to waste so much time on that. But you need to test. You need to test and you need to check things and you need to have new assets. There's a lot of re-downloads. So people are coming, they want to see different things. Most of the big apps that are not doing so much on testing or changing screenshots. I think this is something that it's really very important to address all those other audiences to see, you know, how you can convert them.
Yeah, no, I think those are all very good points. And Nick, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think ASO provides a lot of, I think it's just thinking about like, okay, what is ASO uniquely, like what insights do you uniquely have in ASO that no other team has? And this can go beyond just ASA, right? This is just like, you know, when you want to think about the different cross-functional teams that you want to work with, probably like, at least for me, the product marketing team has been really important just to understand like what are the latest features that we should be showing in App Store events, for example. An App Store event is a very unique, sort of newish placement that can be easily slot into any product marketer's go-to-market plan as a channel that didn't exist before. Another unique insight about ASO is like you get a lot of interesting understanding of install by source, assuming you properly tag everything. So you understand like, okay, what % of your traffic is coming from the organic app store? You could break that down into like what part of that is coming from search versus explore. But then even beyond that, like we have a lot of, we also have a lot of traffic coming in from our mobile website actually. And so And then even beyond that, you also have a unique insight into like how many new versus reinstalls you really have. And no other team can accurately tell you the new versus reinstall like the ASO team, right? Because they're getting that directly from Apple and Google, where that's not tied to a device ID, that's tied to the App Store ID, right? So it's a much more unique ID to accurately tell you who's a new versus reinstall. So then you break that down and you figure out like, okay, where like of my new installs, what are the sources? Where are they coming from? Do I need to diversify it? Is it healthy? Like what should we be doing here? So I think there's a lot of interesting insights you can get from ASO that can, that can help product marketing teams, can help data science teams, can help product growth teams. And I think like with that, ASO teams have like the tools nowadays to build like some of the best cross-functional relationships that you can. And I think like, especially in this economy, like, you really want to make sure that you can prove your value and building those cross-functional relationships and really showing people what ASO can provide is a great way to do that.
Yeah.
Can I add something on that, Anthony? Many times when we want to prove what is ASO to our stakeholders, they don't really care about metadata optimization. But what Nick was saying about traffic sources, you can clearly show your stakeholders, okay, these organic sources of traffic, either search or explore, see how ARPU is growing, see how active devices are growing. So those figures are very clear for them. If revenue is growing from this channel that we call ASO, they don't care how you do it, they like it. And we as ASO, we can show the data. So we don't need to show only how we were ranking before, how many keywords we were ranking. We'll say, okay, you see this channel, this is ASO, this has increased ARPU, this has increased active devices. From this channel, you have less deletions. So we are targeting the right audiences. And you don't see always the same figures for paid and channels. So that's also something very important that we as ASO managers need to know how to talk to people that look at KPIs on other levels, which is eventually money.
Yeah, and I think those are all great points. And I'm seeing a couple questions about custom product pages, so that's a perfect segue, to my next question. But I see a question about what are just some interesting strategy as far as leveraging CPPs, for ASA. I also think custom product pages are a great way not just to improve your ASA performance, but your organic performance. Part of organic rankings are determined by your conversion rate. And so if you have a custom product page that's tailored to a specific segment of keywords, which increases your conversion rate, it can increase your organic rankings, which will help you on the page side. But Andrea, what are some interesting ways you've used custom product pages, and what are just some general best practices you go by?
Right. So without giving names, one of my clients, it's a gay dating app, and they wanted to target in Apple search ads their competitors, their main competitors. So basically, we created a CPP targeting the keywords of the competitor. And by keeping the same brand guidelines, we try to understand what is the message that the competitors are giving, that it's less us, but we want to address those users and try to convert them. So there was a little bit more skin on the screenshots, and there were a little bit more hot images. So we were still our own brand, but we were trying to address those users that were looking for our competitor and speak a little bit more the way they are used to. And the results were good. The CVR for the competitor on ASA improved using that technique.
Yeah, definitely. I know a previous question we had too was, how ASA can help ASO and how ASO can help ASA. I definitely think ASO keyword research can help ASA, especially when it comes to segmenting your audiences into different segments where you can leverage a custom product page, because we're only going to want to invest resources in a CPP that has enough high volume keywords to, justify that investment. But Wes, have you had any experience using custom product pages, in your history?
Yeah, I mean, in the past we used a little bit. I think more so now, it's really baked into the strategy side. So, as you mentioned, I think there's various different audiences in the past where you can only speak to, or only really have verbiage and value prop for one audience. CPP now leverages, the various different audiences that do come to the ad page. One thing that I think that is really undermined and not talked about a lot during this process is the research side, right? We talk a lot about researching on the ASO metadata side, but I think a lot of the key components is researching what your competitors are doing and even non-competitors, because the store is becoming more like a digital storefront, right? Everyone's window shopping essentially. So CPP does add another layer where you can speak to another audience that originally wasn't going to convert. And research into that is actually really key to determining, what do you prioritize in terms of the testing side as well.
Yeah, definitely. Nick, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think some other tactics you can use for custom product pages is building out different custom product pages by source. So, paid versus organic, but even beyond that, like I was saying before, we know that there's a lot of users coming from our mobile website. So building out a custom product page for those sort of like organic sources and just trying to understand that user behavior and what works for that audience is very helpful. And then also just a way to sort of like clean up the whole, like how like the store is really dictated by the language setting on your phone. And so there could be English speaking markets where in that market, there's a bunch of people where their device setting is set to like UK English and US English and a bunch of different versions of English. And so just to make sure that you're, tailoring your message to the right user, you can create custom product pages targeted to specific countries and locations so that everyone in that country sees the localized page that you want them to see.
Yeah, and I love your idea about tailoring the message. I think sometimes that gets lost is that you can actually leverage custom product pages for external marketing, campaigns. So if you're on Facebook and you're running a social media ad for a specific value prop, you can actually send them to a custom product page with the creatives and metadata, or the creatives match that value prop you're showing. So it creates a more consistent journey, right? From what the ad sees on Facebook to what they see on your custom product page, which is going to help, convert on those users as well. So I think one thing too is, don't be afraid to use custom product pages for other things other than, ASA. And it's a perfect segue into my next one. One thing I wanted to bring up was big update on Google Play recently, so I wanted to touch on it, is you can now use custom store listings to target keywords organically that Google gives you, and you don't have to pay for it. It's completely organic. Fingers crossed that Apple takes a similar approach, though. I doubt it. But kind of wanted to give this as more of an open-ended question to everyone. Maybe Andrea, we'll just start with you. Is how are you using this custom store listing feature? Have you seen any success with it? And how, I know my experience, creative teams usually have the biggest bottleneck in apps. How can you take learnings from custom product pages and apply that to your CSLs so you can keep things as efficient as possible?
Well, first of all, I'm very proud of all my clients because they are all up to date. So whenever a CSL came up, they all said, okay, let's do CSL, da, da, da. And then they all thought it's like CPP, but it's not. You cannot target any keyword you want. And while it's free and it's organic, if you're not bringing traffic for the keyword you want to target, you're not going to be able to create a custom store listing. So I think there's something tricky. Google, in UAC, you cannot target by keyword, but eventually, I think the goal is that you do some UAC on other things. So you start bringing organic and some other keywords are suddenly going to show up for you as an option. So CSL is amazing. It's like the, sweet dream of like landing pages and web, but it's limited to your actual traffic. We're testing it now. We've been launching lately some CSLs, and Reddit is a great option for that because people are coming for Reddit for so many different reasons. Some people are looking for information, some looking for people for news, social media. So you really have a big pool of keywords that you can address and optimize your assets to target that. And the nice thing also about custom store listing is that when not only you optimize your screenshots to address the set of keywords you're targeting, but you're not limited with your metadata just to get the juice of the keyword. And you can write nice copy on your title and your short description, and your long description can be like a really nice copywriting thing just for conversion. And we just started. We're starting to gather data. It has been for for a while now, but obviously every company needs to approve. But we're collecting data, and we're seeing that the custom store listing that we launched, obviously localized for every region, is different. And then you have all these things that we are all learning. Okay, who is the default, who is not the default, because you have the store of the phone, and then you need to cut with the country. So you need to figure out all the scenarios. Who is going to be seeing this listing? Should I run it with 50% or 100%? If I set it with 50% my custom store listing, how do I compare that traffic to the main store listing for the same keywords? So there are a lot of things we are learning, because eventually we want to make decisions based on data. So we are setting up you can set up your custom store listing with 100% traffic, and then do an A/B test with your main store listing and check how is it working for those keywords. So you can set it up with 50% and then compare by filtering the keywords for that country. So it's interesting. We are learning a lot, but eventually I'm a big fan of what it's called like web to app, or the message, from the message to the landing page to the screenshot set, to how answer that the user query. That I think is very challenging to understand what people had in mind, and be able to write it out properly and to put the best visual. And custom store listing is, it's giving you all the tools to do that. So, and it's free, so you can go wild there.
Yeah, and I love the point you brought up about you have to do the keyword research at first, because just because it's available doesn't mean you're going to have enough keywords to justify investing that resources. And you're right, Google does give you a list of keywords. So I do think it's very important to use keyword research, see what has a volume, and see what makes sense to justify investing those resources in for custom store listings. But Wes, is this something you and your team has thought about? What are your just general thoughts about the new custom store listing update?
Yeah, I think it's great. I just don't think there's enough supporting data right now to justify, diverting resources into that channel at the moment. The problem I think that I run into is a lot of keywords that Google is recommending is really keywords that we already ranked for. And so does that really mean that there's going to be a true impact, or do we just hone in on what we know works and tried and true and put those resources there? I do think that Google in the app stores compared to Apple is definitely a first mover, right? Introducing these new tools, and I secretly hope that Apple goes the same way as well, where we've seen promotional content now become something that Apple has forced to be an in-app event type deal. But I don't know where Google's intent is, and I don't know how this impacts the true algos. And so until I have a little more information, I can create a better strategy behind it. And it's something that we are keeping an eye on, but right now, due to resources, it doesn't make the most sense.
Yeah, completely agree. A lot of my clients are in the testing phase about this. The one client I have that does a CSL, interesting enough, is photo editing and video editing segmentations. They did see a significant increase in conversion rate, when implementing a CSL. So I'm hoping to see similar data from other clients so you can justify, investing those resources. What about you, Nick? Is this on your radar, Reddit? Are you, have anything in the pipeline?
Yeah, we're just starting to test this, so it's pretty early on the data, but I think it's definitely something everyone should be testing. And Reddit's a little bit lucky because we have over 100,000 communities on our platform, so almost like any sort of theme keyword, I can find content to sort of match it and update my screenshots and preview cards with that sort of content. And I do think like conversion rate, at least right now, is probably the best way to measure the success of this initially until we know more.
Yeah, all good points. So last thing I wanted, to go over, I know it's the Olympics seasonality. We've probably all seen some in-app events around this, promotional content around this. Wes, how are you and your team using in-app events, promotional content? What are some successes you've seen with it?
Yeah, in the past at Twitch, we would use it as a content generation, right? So what is new? I think very exciting back in the day of gaming where Fortnite had new seasons. We would play into that, right? The new graphics would hone in on the new skins, things like that. Now it's evolved and changed a lot for myself, where I'm seeing it as a product and feature launch. And that is due to the fact that I think everyone wants a little bit more out of their apps, right? Especially on the paid side. If you're paying for subscription to use this app, what are the new features that they're building that I'm going to find useful? And I think that's super critical to announce that, whereas there's no real other platform besides maybe CRM that can showcase that value and why we're building these tools that you want. And so my original sort of thought of like just using it as a content machine has now evolved into really product marketing, and using that channel that Nick has mentioned to really have a go-to-market sort of channel for the product managers and the product market managers to say, how do we use this and how do we leverage this so that we can get engagement, right? End of the day, you're building tools so that you're increasing engagement and retention. Hopefully in between getting new downloads. So it is something that we leverage heavily on, and I think has still a lot of value to it.
Yeah, and I love another point you brought up, which I think kind of goes back to our overall sentiment, is that all our teams should be working together. So if your product team has a new feature or something they're going to want to launch, an in-app event promotional content is, perfect for that. So I think this kind of backs up how that synergy is important. Nick, have you been using in-app events promotional content on Reddit? If you have, what successes, what tips can you give to our viewers using this?
Yeah, this is actually like my favorite ASO sort of like tool that we have right now. We've been launching like 2 to 3, probably averaging about like 2 events per month ever since we've been able to. And yeah, what can I say about these App Store events? Like it's such a great way to like sort of bring your App Store page to life. It's, through product feature launches or just like things happening in your app. And again, I think this is sort of the lucky thing that is a lucky thing I have at Reddit, where like anything in the world that's happening is probably also being discussed on Reddit. And so pretty much any event happening in the world, I can find some content on Reddit to drive users into with App Store events. And another thing I like about App Store events is like it's a way to almost like sort of refresh the content on your page without doing the whole preview card refresh, because that that can take a lot of work, especially if you're using user-generated content. Like there's a lot of effort that goes into updating those preview cards versus this App Store event. You can sort of just like update this thing on the fly. And one of the things I want to start doing with this, besides just like moments and product launches, is try to figure out like what are some evergreen App Store events I can run. And then like, how do we refresh that creative? Maybe we update it every month with a different sort of content. Like my idea for this one is featuring different local communities in our priority markets, and then refreshing that every month, and then maybe making tweaks to creatives to try to understand like what is it in the actual in-app event creative that's actually working or not working. Because one challenge I've had is because we've been launching so many different events, they're so different from each other. I don't even know what is the creative elements that are working well or not, because it's like such an apples to orange comparison. But yeah, I love App Store events. I think, yeah, product launches, moments, and anyone who used to be in gaming would know that like if you get featured, that's like a life-changing thing for you, right? And so the amazing thing about app events is that they could be featured in the game or app home tab, depending on your vertical. And so in-app events is not only a way to bring your actual storefront page to life, but it also allows you to fully take advantage of all the different placements in the App Store outside of your page. It also even shows up in your search results as well. And so yeah, everyone should be leveraging in-app events, at least testing it and just trying to see what's working and what's not working. Sorry, and one more thing to add there is you get a bunch of data as well, right? So you get to understand like how many people are actually installing from this in-app event, and how many people are opening, how many people are updating their app from this in-app event. You are able to put a deep link there to drive people specifically to a specific page or screen in your app that you want to grow. And so, yeah, there's a lot of like interesting data and just so many different use cases for this one. I think we're just kind of like sort of scratching the surface on it, actually.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a lot of good points, especially by looking at the data. I feel like sometimes the clients I work with, they just throw in-app events and don't really look at the data to see what's performing, what's not performing. I also think one caveat is that an in-app event can show up in the search results for new users who are searching keywords. So I think there's another layer of what's going to convert them better, are screenshots or that in-app event, especially if that in-app event is a very nuanced in-app event that's only going to apply to current users. So I think there's a lot of layers to this. I think I have enough for one last question. So, Andrea, what are your thoughts on in-app events? What have you seen from your clients?
Yeah, so in-app events and promotional content for Google are a must. And I wasn't requested to say this, but if you are new to this and you have access to Uptweak, you go to the timeline and you check what your competitors are doing. If you don't know where to start, it's not just about features. You have calendars, you have seasonality, and you can see what your competitors have been doing to start to get some ideas. And then by talking to your marketing team, you can see that there are some things that are happening. It's an offline event. One of my apps were having this, they were all meeting up on an island for a party for Pride Month. And we created an event, an in-app event for this, promoting this. So, there are a lot of things that you can do when you talk with other people to get ideas. I think, and I personally like it a lot, this is taking ASO not just from very dry thing to marketing approach and thinking, what can we do? What can we show? And I think it touches a point related to the KPI, which is a little bit tricky because you can have an event that blows your exposure. So you have suddenly 300% increase of impressions, okay? And you grow your installs 20%, but then, oops, CVR dropped. And what happened? CVR drop. Okay, guys, relax. We're bringing more users. We're bringing more installs. That's all good. We just grew a lot, too much in impressions. So a lot of people okay, how do I attribute impressions? How do I attribute installs? It's okay. I mean, if you're growing, and sometimes you can put your CVR aside because in-app events are doing a great thing for exposure, for bringing new users, for touching all these audiences that maybe you were not be able to address before by a keyword research, something you were not necessarily ranking. So recommend it. Don't get lazy and go do in-app events.
Thank you so much. Probably one last follow-up question because I see it in the chat. We got a chat from our viewers if in-app event keywords are ranked, by the algorithm. Wes, I remember you brought this up. Do you have a good example of maybe targeting a keyword in your in-app event and seeing growth organically ranking for it?
I think we're very strategic and thoughtful when we think about using the metadata for the in-app event, right? I think relevancy is the #1 key. But if you're able to tie that back into your app and some things that you're ranking for, it only sometimes I've seen it bolster it, right? We've seen rank climb, like a short-term boost in the ranking. But it's also a great way to rank for keywords that you don't rank for. Right? And that example that I've used of the Olympics, prior to that, I don't think Twitch was even ranked for Olympics at all. So there's a lot of ways. I think the problem is you don't really know how the algos work sometimes. And there's a lot of testing involved, right? And that also comes down to the creatives as well, where Nick, you mentioned testing evergreens. We ran evergreen campaigns, through Twitch as well, and creatives do matter. Especially if we think about how the storefronts is, or at least Apple dictates themselves, right? They pride themselves on being a very high level service place where you will find the best apps and best quality of experience. So generating creatives that match that sort of energy only sees really good possibility, like you said, getting featured as well.
Perfect. Wes, perfect answer. Takes us right to the time. So just wanted to thank all of our panelists today, Andrea, Nick, Wesley. All your insights were incredibly valuable. I know I learned a lot, so I'll probably even be following up with a couple of you with some follow-up questions on my end. But thank you so much for everyone who joined today. We look forward to putting more of these on in the future, and we hope everyone has a great day. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.